Hey y'all, I'm going to do something new here for me and use my phone to record. I've just had so many videos I wanted to make, and I'm not finding the time to get in front of the camera as I would really like. Not in front of my laptop, at least. So, sorry for the wiggle on the camera, and I may be making a cut here and there as I finish my lunch. I'm super hungry. Actually, I wanted to do this a bit ago, but I was just so hungry I couldn't think of anything but food. With a video response to our D&D Grognards, the grognardiest of them all thread, which has been really interesting to listen to. It started with Confessions, his video, and I've also listened to Runeslingers, and I listened to Ivan's. Good things to think about in all of them. But I'm going to be, I'm going to be going places a little differently. So, do I think D&D Grognards are the grognardiest of them all? Yes, I do. Now, qualifications for getting there. First and foremost, actually, I'm not sure I answer the question or react to the question very accurately, because if I look at the question linguistically, literally, it is saying, take the individual average grognard, D&D grognard. Take the average individual WoW grognard. WoW? Not WoW. World of Darkness. Grognard, or the average grognard for Fate. Measure their grognardiousness. Who has the highest score? When it comes to that, no, I think they are equivalent. But it does make a difference to me in answering this question, how we're seen, how we're felt, how the community affects each other, how the community is viewed and affects the people who are not in it yet, how the community fragments, and in that way, I see the D&D Grognards, someone has mentioned, multiple people have mentioned, they're merely the most, the most numerous. Well, that matters. If 10% of the role-playing group of the community was WOD Grognards, and 10% were Fate Grognards, and 10% were D&D Grognards, and 10% were made up Grognards of all the rest, would make such a big deal. It's the huge percentage that they represent. And I should have said this at the beginning. Let me point out, everyone's understanding of this is not only theoretical and philosophical, but also according to their own personal experiences, right? So if I've seen 10 times the number of D&D Grognards, and I've seen bad things come out of that group, I'm going to have a different point of view on this than someone who hasn't. That does not invalidate either person's point of view. There is still an objective truth to the matter, but we can't get there individually. So, anyways, but why do I think that it matters? I think it matters because we have things go on, crap go on, like D&D being synonymous with role-playing. Sorry, it's not. And that's a little bit of a slight to everyone who doesn't like D&D or doesn't play D&D. There's even in a community that has been so inclusive in its history, has been a refuge of the outsider way back at the beginning. We make outsiders of our own. When in a brigade con, maybe an OSG post, someone references a monster, I can only get from the context that it's from a monster, and I can get from the community, from the culture, that's a D&D monster. But that wasn't actually evident in what was said. It's assumed that you know this. And if you don't know it, you're just kind of left there hanging out. My opinion, that kind of crap needs to stop. We have, I'm going to try not to get too hot about this particular one. Here's an example. I had a friend who is a role player. He's an older schooler role player than me. He has played a lot of Dungeons & Dragons. And he has a group of friends that got together, all dads, who didn't have as much time to role play anymore because they have families. And so they started a group of the dads and their kids, which was awesome. So I don't know how many dads this is, 4, 6 dads. And they moved from one D&D edition to another, to another. You might say, well, that's fine, that's what they like. Yeah, that's true, that's what they like, and that's fine. Until he says, I'd like us to try Pathfinder. He's not even going that far off. Come on, Pathfinder, that's still in the D&D treehouse. You can argue, but it's no Fate, it's no World of Darkness, it's no GURPS. It's D20 stuff, come on. No, they don't want to. They want to just move to D&D 4th. And after that, D&D 5th. You have someone who you've been playing with for a large amount of time. Someone you call a friend who would like to do something else. And you say no. He's not talking about permanent change. He wants to try it out. You know what? You're no friend of his. You are using him as an object. You have objectified him. He is the tool that sits in a chair that makes your D&D game possible. That's crap. And that's the crap I see from D&D Grognards. I don't see what happens to, say, a World of Darkness Grognard, because they pretty much stay within themselves. They all know that they really only want to play that, and that's fine. But even in a World of Darkness Grognard circle, if someone wanted to try something else out, and they all said, no, let's not, then you're not really being friends. You're using them as hobby tools. But we get back to, okay, that's equally grognardy, equally horrible in my opinion, but where do you see this the most? In my experience, I see this the most in D&D. Get off hot topics like that, or hot issues like that. I also think it's really interesting. I'm kind of becoming aware of this. Like, the word that the PhD in the college degree stands for, someone reminded me, my wife reminded me just a little while ago, is something about the philosophy of. And in this topic that made me realize there's a difference between the people who just like to play the games and the people who like to think about the games, think about how they're made, why they're made, what kind of play does this generate. In a lot of these VRs, we get a lot of good discussion that is of that ilk. That's about the philosophy. And for me, yeah, I like to play the games. And if you only like to play the games and you don't really like to think about it, you're still going to be enjoyable to have around the table. And I'm going to do my best to not be someone who treats you as a hobby partner, but a person. But the person that I'm going to sit around and have a long discussion with afterwards is going to be someone who's PhD RPG. You know, someone who wants to think about all the ways that rules could be made, what effect this has on the world, what effect it has on the players, the GM, etc., etc. You know, Ivan was talking about the straight D20 versus the pool dice where you get a distributive curve, and then some other oddball systems that don't quite work. And I want to enjoy this hobby with people who look at it like that. When you look at it like that, you might have a favorite system. That favorite system might be Dungeons and Dragons, but you're still going to want to go out and explore. I really shouldn't babble much more about this, but let me think of one other thing that I was thinking of, and that is that, and possibly because I want to look at, I like to enjoy role playing from the philosophy of, not just in the game that I like. Ivan was noting how inconsistent the really old school Dungeons and Dragons is, and that's a famous book, the Murphy's Law book, which points out these really weird holes in all the mechanics of different systems. I'd love to have a copy of that, but I bet you those are super expensive now. I should put that on my Amazon wish list. Like, I look at things like that, and I say, why would you want to stay in that system? I don't understand. Keep looking. Maybe even start making your own. I made a comment recently on the Game Apologist channel, on his video. It wasn't Grognard video. Dang it! I forget what it is. I'll comment somewhere. Put an annotation. About it. Maybe that's, he was talking about how rules are parts of a system, not just independent. And I said maybe this is another one of the reasons why I'm not a great fan of house ruling. Ivan was mentioning, if we want to put on a fear thing and it's not represented in D&D or something like that, just throw it in. Well, you could just throw it in, and I'm not saying it would if you threw one in, it would necessarily break the system. But should you? Does it? Did you stop to think about it? And to me, that's just part of that Grognardius. When you look at tacking on a rule or ignoring a rule, instead of going out there and finding a system that you like, or not that you like. Sorry, that's not what I mean to say. That does what you're trying to get it to do. Rather than adding a ball hitch to your Honda Civic, how about you get a truck and does it right and does it well, or rent a truck. Let's just scrap this whole part. Well, this is what I get when I don't have notes. I'm not quite sure how all these thoughts are coming together. If I've missed something, I kind of feel like I missed something that I wanted to talk about. So in summary, I feel that there are cultural, both how we're perceived from the outside. Hey, Jack Chick just died a little while ago and not everybody knows his name. But the same ideas still exist in certain circles. So when we use D&D as our face, that's what we get with it. We get that association and those problems. How about we stop doing that? How about we just start role-playing? There's D&D, there's GURPS, there's World of Darkness, there's Fate, etc. So there's some cultural things there that I feel that the D&D Grognards have had a much larger impact on the hobby than any other set of Grognards. And there are some, and then for me there are just some preference things about how I like to enjoy role-playing, and therefore, and discuss it both in the game and around the game, that, again, Grognards in general don't jive well with me. And we're back to, but how many of what kind have I seen? And yeah, so while on the individual person-by-person basis, maybe, the D&D Grognard isn't Grognardier than any other Grognard. But as a community and as a culture as a whole, their prevalence still weighs in greater. And I think that's worth thinking about. All right. Hopefully I get to do some more VRs, maybe like this. I've been having a whole lot of topics I want to talk about, so catch you later.